The Last Journey. Chapter 6.
No response, Captain.
Hall replied. I called Kate in the sensor lab. Kate, what can you tell me about that planet? She responded.
Seems dead, abandoned thousands of years ago. But, sir, our shipmates are down there. I'll send you the coordinates.
I ordered, send them to Shirley in the teleporter room. After a few minutes,
Captain,
Shirley reported.
I can't get a lock on the team. Something is blocking the teleporter.
I stood. Don, you have the con. I'm going down there to find our people. Hall, tell Chief Briggs to meet me in the teleporter room with 2 of his people with laser rifles. I met my team. Air's okay down there, but be watchful. Let's go. We teleported down and found a blank wall, beyond which my unicorder indicated our team was. We ran around the obstacle and found a doorless, windowless block that seemed hollow. I pointed to a spot about 7 feet above the ground and ordered the laser rifles to burn me a 2-inch hole. The wall slowly gave way to the laser fire, and after about 10 minutes, I had my 2-inch hole. Number 1, you and your team in there? I heard her reply.
Yes, Captain, we are in here.
I ordered. We are going to burn through the wall right below the hole here about 3 feet in diameter. Get as far from there as you can. She replied.
Aye, aye, sir.
I burned the wall where I wanted the new hole and directed the security crewman to burn through the wall. After about an hour, T-Sun cried.
Captain, it's getting very hot in here.
I signed for a stop. Then, I directed George to send down air conditioning equipment to cool the prison inside while we cut. Pumping cool air into the block, we resumed cutting. It took 6 hours to complete the hole and get our crewmen out of their prison. All 9 of the team stumbled out and began to vomit. T-Sun looked up and said,
You need to see what's in there, sir.
I went through the hole and began to retch myself. Hundreds of dead bodies, in a state of decomposition, from recent deaths on top of a pile of decaying bodies down to nothing but bones. I stumbled out, retching. Chief, burn down that whole wall. The security crewman did as I commanded. Soon the wall was gone, and we could see the death and decay before us. George stepped forward, looking.
Captain, check out the things these bodies have with them. I need to gather up all that stuff and study it.
I directed. George, get some of your people, but use environmental suits. Bag whatever you pick up and decontaminate before you bring it into the ship. You've got 2 days. T-Sun and her team had teleported to the ship, and I followed. T-Sun met me in the teleporter room.
Captain, whatever took us away, took our weapons but left things like our unicorders.
I told her, when George and his crew have the items they want to study from the prison room, we will return to the first artifact and see what we can find out about the weapons, then we will destroy every artifact we can find. Kidnap my people, they will pay dearly. We returned to the first artifact and, using our sensor array, we studied it, mapping every inch of the damn thing. We found the control center and, using the ship's laser, blasted the control center to smithereens. I took a small team over and found the weapons cache. We found hundreds of weapons and, after decontaminating them, turned the lot over to George and his engineers. I called T-Sun. We are going to blast that thing to Kingdom Come. Would you like to do it? She smiled an evil grin.
Yes, sir.
I chuckled. Okay, have at it. I'm going to see George. The next thing I heard was T-Sun ordering a TT torpedo to be teleported into the artifact, a bright flash of light, and a few fragments pinging off the ship's hull. I returned to the bridge and told T-Sun to proceed to the next artifact, and we would repeat the process, hunting down as many of the artifacts as we could and destroying every one of them. She brightened.
May I do it? All of them? Please, Captain.
I chuckled. It's all yours. I want all the loot before we destroy the artifact. It might be advantageous to take one artifact apart and try to discover anything that might be useful. She nodded.
Yes.
As I sat in the command chair, I heard George's voice.
Captain, could you come to engineering? I have something to show you.
I stood. Steele, you have the con. I'll be in engineering. I walked to engineering and asked, George, what is it? He replied,
Sir, most of this stuff we have gotten is the same as ours, just designed for different hands. But this one.
He held up a strange-looking object.
This one is something I've never seen. It will fry and burn flesh, but not hurt or damage inanimate objects. It kills or maims, but does not do any damage to inanimate things.
I asked, does it work through inanimate objects to kill? In other words, can it be blocked or not? He replied,
I don't know, Captain. I'll check it out.
I said, George, store everything so we can turn it over to Navy R&D except this one. He smiled.
Aye, sir.
Sitting in my ready room, I began to think about what we have experienced. The scenario of the abduction of my crewmen and their eventual prison tantalized my brain for several hours until I remembered the kidnapping of Admiral Keeler, Admiral Stone, and Ambassador Stein. The prison environment for the admirals and the ambassador was identical to that of my crewmen. So, although the planet seemed to be dead, the perpetrators were still alive and very active. What kind of vermin would devise such a prison? I called the sensor lab. Catherine, I'm going to order a search for more of the artifacts. I want a global search pattern, and a global scanning pattern, 1 parsec out. Can do? She replied.
Aye, Captain.
Then I called T-Sun. Number 1, I want a global search for these artifacts. UL1. Start with the most recent one we've found, and search around the planet in concentric circles until we have found as many as we can. She regarded me.
May I assign Barbara that task, sir?
I just nodded. Yes. I had an idea and went down to see Shirley and George. As I entered engineering, I saw the two huddled together, whispering. They looked up and smiled.
Captain, what can we do for you?
I asked, are you two an item? Shirley replied.
We are colleagues. We are both protégés of my Robert. We could be an item. I guess.
George stood there and nodded, then asked.
Captain, what can we do for you?
I said, look, when we rescued Admiral Stone and Keeler and Ambassador Stein, the prison they were in had all the characteristics of the prison our crewmen were in. Teleported into a sealed room to die a horrible death, no one knowing or caring except us. I want something to get through the bulkhead of such a room without frying everyone. O'Reilly put together a water-cooled hole saw, and we piped in refrigerated air to cool the team off. But we need something else to cut a hole without killing the room's occupants. Something for you to think about. Shirley and George looked at each other.
Yes, sir.
I clapped them on their shoulders and smiled at them. Be happy. As I returned to the bridge, Barbara said we had found 16 artifacts and destroyed 15. George and Shirley had disabled the controls in the 16th artifact and were tearing down the system to be able to analyze it later. She smiled.
Thank you, sir. This has been fun.
I quietly asked her, what about not having someone? Have you come to terms with that? She looked a little sad.
I guess so. I'm taking what you said seriously about being careful, knowing what I want and need.
Then she asked to speak privately. T-Sun, you have the con, I said as I waved Barbara into the ready room.
Captain, is there a clone of you?
I was startled. I beg your pardon? She started to cry.
Captain, I need and want a man like you. To me, you are the epitome of masculinity. I don't know if I will ever find anyone like you.
My response was, Barb, just look around you. Every man on this ship is the epitome of masculinity, just as every woman is the epitome of femininity. You are a very feminine woman. A real catch, just look around. I see the unattached guys watching you when they get a chance. I laughed. You remind me of a girl I once knew. She was a stunner. On a scale of 1 to 10, she was an 11. Guys would break their necks doing a double and triple take as she walked by, and she was clueless about the attention she was getting. I whispered, Commander Steele, just take notice of the people around you. She had a huge grin.
Yes, sir. And thank you, Captain.
And she returned to the command chair. As she left, I thought, thank you, Lieutenant Commander Barbara Steele. I have never been given a nicer compliment. We continued to search for artifacts and destroy them. We found that each concentric circle of artifacts contained 16 of the damnable things and destroyed each one we came across. In time we found 20 concentric circles of artifacts, each 1/2 parsec further away from the planet. We destroyed 320 of the damn things. It seems as though the circles of artifacts were only located at a level parallel to the galactic plane. After which, we returned to the central planet, began a detailed exploration of everything on the surface, and then searched for anything underground. We found 15 more horror chambers, like the one we rescued our crewmen from, located in such a manner that one was always visible to one line of artifacts. The rest of the team nodded in agreement. I replied, so am I mourn the shipmates we have lost. I do not want to ever add to that burden. Well, let's saddle up and see what other surprises this quadrant has for us. T-Sun asked.
Sir, would you explain your metaphor to a saddle?
I laughed. Let's go to the ready room. and I'll show you. In the ready room, I ordered the computer to show the 1953 movie, on top of Old Smoky, staring at Gene Autry. As the movie ended, I said, those big animals the people rode were called horses, they were powerful and served people as a mode of transportation. The rider sat in a saddle strapped to the horse. So, saddle up means get ready to move. T-Sun stood.
That was amazing. I'd like to ride a horse someday.
So saddle up number 1, and let's see what other wonders we can find. Barbara's voice interrupted our little conversation.
Captain, I just saw something coming out of that prison chamber below, another captain.
We ran out, and Barbara pointed out on our view screen the view below. I saw 6 creatures milling about below. They gathered around our memorial and then hung their heads and began to walk back to the prison chamber. Well, number 1, let's go greet our visitors, shall we? I remarked as I started to the lift. She pointed to Hank, Barbara, and Steve and signaled to follow. She ordered,
Chief Briggs, you and Paul meet us in the teleporter with sidearms.
We gathered in the teleporter, strapped on our sidearms, personal shields, and unicorder, and teleported to the surface, there to meet the recent arrivals. They were roughly humanoid, with 2 legs, 2 arms, a head, a torso, gray, dressed in uniforms of varying colors. When they saw us, they were perplexed. I raised my right hand and said, "Greetings, we are peaceful and just want to help." Let me pause here to tell you that our unicorders have a rudimentary translation function. One of our guests dressed in blue raised his right appendage and said,
Greetings, we are the survivors of the Genkrin conglomerate.
I replied, "We are of the USS Constitution of the United System Federation Navy. I am Captain David Stevens, this one is Commander T-Sun Peterson, my first officer. This one is Lieutenant Commander Barbara Steele, my helmsman. This one is Commander Hank Peterson, my navigator. This one is Lieutenant Stephen James, my assistant navigator. This one is Master Chief Petty Officer Robert Briggs, my security chief. And this one is Paul Dunn, Chief Briggs's right-hand man." The creature in blue turned and seemingly introduced its team. Names were unpronounceable in the human tongue. I asked, "Please forgive me, I cannot pronounce your titles, but I want to know how you came here." The story the creature in blue told us was much the same as what our crewmen had experienced. I asked if they knew where they were, and the creature in blue said,
No.
I returned, "Neither do we. But my ship is nearby. We have a problem. This planet is dead. No life of its own, desert. I can't leave you here and am reluctant to take you with us." I shook my head sadly. T-Sun replied,
Captain, we can't abandon them here. We can confine them on the ship and help them use the replicator to get food and other necessities. When we return to the ship, the computer can help translate their titles into something we can pronounce.
We teleported to the ship, and our visitors were assigned cabins. We explained that to safeguard ourselves and help them, we needed to implant a tracking device to allow the computer to track their movements while aboard the Constitution. We explained that the tracking device was biocognizant, and if it were removed, we would know that something was amiss and investigate. We discovered that our visitors were herbivores, and all plant life provided nourishment, already programmed into our computer as our vegetables. I took Blue Boy, the creature in blue, to our conference room, and we began to study available star charts. As we studied, he became excited as he recognized a triple system, 100 light-years away. I was astonished. 100 light-years? How is that possible? I called the bridge. "Number 1, check your monitor, see the triple system in the upper left-hand corner. That's where we are going. Saddle up, girl, UL-12. Tell Kate to look for artifacts along the way." Blue Boy asked.
You have females aboard your ship.
I replied, yes we do, they occupy normal and critical positions aboard. My first officer is female and is a damn good officer. Our complement is just about 50-50 male and female. Blue Boy regarded me.
That seems odd. But if it works for you.
Captain, we have discovered something like an artifact 1 parsec out. Your orders, sir.
I replied, "All stop at 10 kilometers. Examine it thoroughly and amplify it." George had been on the bridge and stated,
Captain, this one is different, let me examine it before you blow it up.
Well, all right, George. We'll examine it before we blow it up. But we will blow it up. George decided there was nothing new on the artifact, so we blew it up and pressed onward. Eventually, we destroyed 6 artifacts, and at the 7th, we met a strange ship, which Blue Boy told me was the ship on which he and his team served. Try as we might, we could not communicate with their ship, so we sent the team to their ship. Moments later, Blue Boy returned with another of his race in tow, a little larger, wearing a very bright orange uniform. Blue Boy spoke.
Captain Stevens, this is my captain, Captain Redbeard.
Examine it thoroughly and amplify it. George had been on the bridge and stated,
Captain, this one is different, let me examine it before you blow it up.
Well, all right, George. We'll examine it before we blow it up. But we will blow it up. George decided there was nothing new on the artifact, so we blew it up and pressed onward. Eventually, we destroyed 6 artifacts, and at the 7th, we met a strange ship, which Blue Boy told me was the ship on which he and his team served. Try as we might, we could not communicate with their ship, so we sent the team to their ship. Moments later, Blue Boy returned with another of his race in tow, a little larger, wearing a very bright orange uniform. Blue Boy spoke.
Captain Stevens, this is my captain, Captain Redbeard.
He brought over his star charts of this quadrant and vowed to destroy as many artifacts as possible. We agreed upon a rendezvous time and place 1 year out when we would update each other concerning the artifacts. His first officer, Blue Boy, and the captain returned to their ship and began their search for the artifacts. I called T-Sun and directed that she coordinate with Hank to integrate the star charts that Captain Redbeard had given us, use the ready room to do it. As I sat in the command chair, I became aware that Commander Steele was staring at me. Steele, what are you looking at? She shook her head.
I guess you, sir. My mind was someplace else. May we talk, Captain?
I nodded, and we went to the lift, rec room. We stepped into the rec room, got a cup of coffee, and sat at a table. I raised my left eyebrow and asked, What is it, Commander? She replied,
Sir, do you remember telling me to look around me?
Yes, she said.
Well, I have been, and you're right about the people on our ship. They are men and women of character, loyal, kind, and, well, worth knowing. And some are looking at me. How do I decide which one to choose?
I replied, That, my dear Lieutenant Commander Barbara Louise Steele, I can't tell you. All I can say is follow your heart, but remember, whomever you choose, has the right to choose or not to choose, just like you. Now we have work to do. And we returned to the bridge. Returning to the bridge, T-Sun and Hank exited the ready room.
Sir, the star charts have been updated and we are ready to go.
I said, Okay, people. T-Sun interrupted me.
Captain, we need to return to the prison planet and rout out the other artifacts. If we don't, others will die.
Okay, people, back to the prison planet. But let's check the next position 45 degrees from here. After we have checked the whole circle, we will return. We found and destroyed 6 more artifacts, but at the 7th, we found a derelict ship tethered to the artifact. An examination of the ship revealed that it was ancient, no bodies were in the ship, and we mourned the crew, knowing their fate. We sent a TT torpedo, and the artifact and the derelict ship disappeared. We went to the place of the 8th artifact, but the ship of Captain Redbeard had already destroyed it and was heading toward the planet to take out more artifacts, as we did. We destroyed 203 artifacts and then met Captain Redbeard and his ship in orbit around the planet. Captain Redbeard and I conferred and concluded that we needed to destroy the planet. Captain Redbeard and I devised a plan to teleport our most powerful torpedoes into the planet's core, time to allow us to escape, sending the planet into its sun. Captain Redbeard and his first officer, T-Sun, and I felt this was the most expeditious way to stop the artifact trap. And so, we did as we had planned, we watched from afar as the planet melted in the fervent heat of its sun.